Greetings everyone, Slizzle466 here, and in today's video we're looking at some of the best decks in Wild post the nerfs and buffs and the Tome Tampering ban. So I've got at least one deck from each class, and we're starting off with Death Knight, looking at Triple Blood Death Knight. So this is a control deck. It's actually pretty good. There are some very strong of the Triple Blood cards. Vampiric Blood's really good. This is a two blood card, but the Corpse Explosion's great for removal. So basically you're just going for a lot of value here, and just overwhelming your opponent with your own minions while also removing theirs. For Demon Hunter, we have Questline Demon Hunter. So if you're not familiar with the Questline, basically you're trying to draw a lot of cards. And by drawing all those cards, it basically means that once you play the minion, all future cards you draw cost 2 less. And you can basically do a lot of crazy combos. Specifically, the combo with Il'gynoth, so your lifesteal damages the enemy hero instead of healing you. And then you've got cards like Fellscream Blast, Unleash Fell, just to name a few. You can also buff them a little bit further with the Moag Artificer to OTK your opponent. Looking at Druid, we start with Ramp Druid. So this has the typical package of stuff you see in most Druid decks: the Aquatic Forms, Biology Projects, Floop Glorious Gloop. You've got the Twig of the World Tree, Sphere of Sapience combo to bump up to 20 mana once you have Guff played out. But basically, this list, the finishing condition is a lot of very big, cheap minions. So you've got the Crypt Keeper, which is typically going to be free because you gain so much armor. The Volcanic Lumberer becomes very cheap once you kill off a lot of minions, whether it's with using Scale of Onyxia, Raid Boss Onyxia, or Flipper Friends. And basically, you just overwhelm your opponent to the point where they give up because they know there's no way to beat you, or you beat them down with your own big minions. Another nice build of Druid that I've been playing around with is Jade Druid. So it's called Jade Druid here simply because it runs one Jade Idol as a backup win condition. The win condition of the deck is to play a Nubrakan, which, yes, it's been nerfed, but it doesn't make a difference to this deck. But you can play a Nubrakan with all your armor, including the 8 it gives you. You could then play Astalor Bloodsworn, play the 5 mana Astalor the Protector to give you the 5 armor, and then play the 8 mana one to deal 16 randomly distributed damage. You can combo that with Bran, which is nice. And you don't even need a Nubrakan if you happen to have 20 mana built up with your Guff. But again, if that combo doesn't work, you've got the big green men as your backup plan. Looking at Hunter, we've got Beast Hunter. I was pleasantly surprised how strong this deck was. Basically, you keep all your cheap stuff and your Starving Buzzard in your mulligan, and you just kind of have a good time in the early game with all your 1/1s, and then you try to attempt to OTK your opponent with Tundra Rhinos combined with Scavenging Hyenas. The Harpoon Gun will reduce the cost of some of those big beasts, which is really nice. You've also got the Hydrolodon in there, which is a pretty big threat. Hope of Kel'Thas as a weapon that gives you some power. So just a really powerful hunter deck and one of the best hunter decks to play right now. Looking at Mage, I'm actually using 2 versions of Reno Mage here. So this first version is a 30 card version, and this list is running as a control list. So you can see how you've got Armor Vendor to survive, Devolving Missiles to deal with decks like Big Priest. And so you've got a lot of your early game survival. It's quite a minion heavy list, so the Book of Spectres helps you get some of those minions that you might be desperate to get, such as your Zephyrus or one or both of your Renos. But you can see here at the top end, it's not too greedy. It tops out at Magister Dawngrasp and Mutinous the Devourer, But essentially here you're just playing a slow game, grinding your opponent down until they either concede or you beat them down with your own stuff. I've also got a 40 card version to highlight. And this specific list has a lot of tech in it. And it's just an interesting list. So we see things like animated broomstick that you might not always see in your Reno Mage lists. This is a Luna's Pocket Galaxy list, so having the minions costing 1 is great. So one of the reasons the broom is nice is you can play a big minion like Gaia the Tectonic and give it rush with the broom. But otherwise, it's, you know, you've got a lot of removal, like Rolling Fireball, Spamming Arcanist, Waste Warden to deal with, say, an even Shaman or a Pirate Rogue, depending on the type of minion you want to deal with. So nice little list to play around with. And then you've got Secret Mage. Nothing special here. It's an incredibly strong deck, very easy to play. If you're not Legend yet, or you want to get a quick Legend at the beginning of the year, this is a great way to do it. Looking at Paladin, we have Aggro Paladin. I actually didn't have much success with this list, but one thing I did like about the build of it is you've got the order in the court, so you reorder your deck from highest cost to lowest cost. The most expensive card in the deck is Call to Arms, so basically you can guarantee to get that Call to Arms as early as possible. Otherwise, I found that most of the time I would play the Call to Arms and then I'd lose my board. I only played 3 games, but I just had a very unlucky 3 games, possibly. So if you don't own these legendaries, maybe sub in something else to play around with to see how you feel. But otherwise, these legendaries are pretty good in the list. Give it some extra power. So if you want to play some Aggro Pally, this is one way to do it. Looking at Reno Paladin, so I believe this, so this build of Reno Paladin, it's not the 40 card version, so it's just your everyday 30 card. But as we typically see, it's based around getting Nosdormu the Timeless out really early, getting your big stuff out early in the game. That big stuff being the Anachronos, which is great to make your opponents basically lose 2 turns of stuff they played. The Leviathan's great, Kazakusan's great, Cariel's amazing, Dragon Queen Alex Strauss is amazing. So just a really big Reno Paladin list. I'm using the advantage of Nosdormu the Timeless. Looking at Priest, I saw this list, this Heal OTK list, and I thought it was a really weird list when I saw it. And then I played it, and it was actually incredibly good. I won every game I played with this list. I think I went 3-0, maybe 4-0. But basically, you've got all these little dirtly cards like Desperate Prayer and Flash Heal. They're really good to help you survive against aggro. But on the other hand, if you're against a slower deck and you're not trying to just not die, you hold on to these cards and then you combine them with Embrace the Shadow and OTK your opponent out of nowhere. I just found this list great. The only card I think is not necessary is the maybe the Najak Hexen, if you don't own it. But everything else, it felt pretty solid. So this was a really fun list to play. Looking at another list, I'm not putting Big Priest in here because it's just Big Priest. There's nothing special. But I do want to mention a Reno list. It's a 40 card Reno list. Some people are running 30 card lists. I kind of prefer the 30 cards because I like to get my Raza and my Anduin as soon as possible. But the reason I chose this list is it's running Spawn of Shadows, and a lot of people have dropped Spawn of Shadows, and I always really enjoyed it. I always really enjoyed pinging off my opponent using the 0 mana Anduin power, having the Spawn of Shadows out, and just doing a horrendous amount of damage out of nowhere. So this is more of an old school Reno Priest list, but it's running the 40 card package, and it's definitely a fun one to play. Looking at Rogue, Rogue got a bit of a hit because it did get a bunch of stuff nerfed. So the rogue decks that are currently still seeing success are Pillager Rogue. This list is just incredible, or the archetype I should say. You can do a horrendous amount of damage out of nowhere. You play your... In this list, I like this list because it's not running, I forget the name of the card, the guy that gives you coins. This list isn't running the coin guy, the 2-mana neutral. But I found it was easier to play without him. So basically when I play this list, I would play the Foxy Fraud, I would play the Scab's Cutter Butter, and then I would just start throwing things out, bouncing them back with Tenwu and Shadow Steps, and then just doing tons of damage with Spectral Pillager. So this specific list is one of my favorite that I've seen as of late. The other rogue list is Pirate Rogue. There's nothing special here, with the exception of there's no Mr. Smite. It looks like this player has cut Mr. Smite and put in an Ashen Elemental, which is a great tech against Mage, because it gets around their Ice Block. But if you're not queuing into lots of mages, maybe put Mr. Smite back in. Or even a Leroy Jenkins. It's up to you. Looking at Shaman, we've got Even Shaman. Nothing particular fancy about the list. It's basically there's just so much totem synergy that it works really well. I really like the lists that run the Cult Neophytes and the Frostbites because it's strong against Mage and Priests, which are everywhere in the meta. But otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward build. Not a big fan of the Wind Fury. It does catch your opponents off guard, but it is a little bit of a win more card. Maybe swap out the Wind Fury for a second Cult Neophyte if you want to. Big Shaman. I actually had very little success when I tested this, but if you really want to play Big Shaman, give this a spin. This is probably the best built version you're going to find. But I just found that I ran out of steam. Even when I high rolled and played the Ancestor's Call on 4, I would still just run out of steam. So the nerf to Lightning Bloom really hurt the archetype. So it's definitely not what it used to be. But if you're desperate to play Big Shaman, there you go. Shadowhawk Shaman. Shadowhawk Shaman, I like this list because it's 30 cards. Again, one of the cards you want to get to the most is your Shadowhawk. When you're running 40 cards and you're not running Pokelt, it's kind of hard to get to that Shadowhawk sometimes, and it can be frustrating. So I like this more condensed version. It's running all the Murlocs to clear things and be annoying with Mutinous, things like that. Freezing boards with Snowfall Guardian. But otherwise, there's nothing particularly fancy about this list. It's just highly optimized, and I'm a fan. Moving to Warlock, we have Even Warlock. Now, I was surprised because the current meta is pretty heavily dominated by Mage, and playing Even Lock in a Mage meta is not a good idea. However, I queued this list up, I was queuing into Mages, and I was beating them. Now, keep in mind, most of the reasons that I won my games was because I just happened to get Sea Devil Stinger into Gigafin out on turn 4, which often is an instant win. And keep in mind, when you play the Sea Devil Stinger and the Gigafin, you take a bunch of damage, and then you can maybe get the Molten Giants out for free as well. So I may got a little lucky, and this is also an archetype I enjoy playing a lot. The Soul Rend is interesting, but also really good against Shaman to clear their boards. So if you want to play some Even Lock, this list is a really fun one. I was also pleasantly surprised when I queued up this Reno Lock and also won all my games, all 3 or 4 that I played. So this specific list, it has a lot of anti-aggro removal, which I'm a big fan of. So Unstable Shadow Blast is a pretty nice addition. I really like the Full-Blown Evil. This was great against, say, Pirate Rogues with like a ship's cannon and a couple of annoying pirates, so that was great. Forensic Duster, most people don't see it coming, so it's kind of a funny one. But otherwise, this list was solid. It's actually running very similar to Even Lock in a way, running the Giants and the Gnolls and the Gigafins and things. So it's kind of a hybrid Giants Lock, Even Lock, but it's Reno, and it just worked really well for me. So I'm a fan of this one. Last of all, we have Warrior. Now, this is the only list I haven't had a chance to test. But what I found with Reno Warrior lists is they're usually pretty weird. So I don't have much to say about this one. I have found that normally when I play Reno Warrior, I tend to do pretty well, which surprises me. But otherwise, I haven't got this card yet. I don't know if I should craft it. But yeah, if you want to play Reno Warrior, give this one a try, but just be warned. I don't have any experience with it, so I don't know if I should recommend it or not. But what I can recommend, if you like falling asleep, is Odd Warrior. So this is a 40 card Odd Warrior with Prince Ranathal. Again, I was just expecting to lose a whole bunch, but basically the win condition of this deck is to watch your opponent basically bore themselves to death. There is no actual finisher in the deck. The finisher is just make your opponent give up. So if that's your style of play, you'll have a lot of fun. So there you go, 21 decks to play around with. If you want to try any of them for yourself, you'll find the deck codes in the description below. If you're a mobile user and it is difficult for you to get those deck codes, there is an easy to enter link to my Discord. You can visit the deck lists only channel and you'll be able to more easily get the deck codes there. If you want to help support this channel, you can click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and until next time, hope to see you again.